Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cellular Healing TV. I'm Ashley Smith. Today, Dr. Pompa is speaking with Dr. Raj Persaud about the psychology of fasting and longevity. They're discussing so much, from living longer to relationships, and explaining what exactly the psychology of longevity is. This is a really stimulating episode where not only will you learn a lot, but you may also find yourself laughing quite a bit. Our guest, Dr. Raj, has quite the sense of humor. Dr. Raj Persaud is a psychiatrist with a huge interest in longevity. He has consulted with the premier research and training institutions for psychiatry in Europe. Dr. Raj also has a podcast called Raj Persaud in Conversation, which includes a lot of complimentary information on the latest research findings in mental health, plus interviews with top experts from around the world. You can read more about Dr. Raj and find his links in our show notes. This episode of CHTV has been brought to you by Fast Tonic. This oral stable molecular hydrogen supplement assists in fasting, shows promise in anti-aging, encourages post-workout recovery, mitigates oxidative stress, inflammation, and many other triggers for disease and imbalance. Curious to try molecular hydrogen for yourself? Our CHTV audience can check it out at getfasttonic.com. So let's get started and welcome Dr. Pompa and Dr. Raj Persaud to the show. This is Cellular Healing TV.
Dr. Raj, welcome to Cell TV.
I'm great. It's great to be here. I'm really looking forward to it.
And by the way, all the way from London, it's midnight your time. Am I right on that?
That's right. That's right. I'm not suffering from insomnia or anything. It's just the best time I could get to talk to you. But it's midnight here in London in the UK. It's raining. It's freezing.
Well, I have to say where I am in Park City, it's 30 degrees, snowy, and we have a lot of snow on the ground. So par for the course, what you would think from where we both live. Well, I have to say, with a resume like yours, okay, I mean, I don't even know where to begin. I mean, the top what a study. And I heard you're number 17 in beach tennis. I mean, and the question was going to be, that didn't make your resume, by the way, but we were talking about that prior. But the question is this: out of all of those things, and I'm sure, Ashley talked about some of them, but not nearly the amount that are on your resume. Really, it's very impressive. I have to ask the question, what are you most proud of besides the beach tennis?
Well, it's a good question. I'm proud of being a psychiatrist, but I think that psychiatry has got a very kind of like strange reputation with the public. Psychiatrists tend to be viewed not as the most effective doctors. People are a little bit pessimistic about the idea that psychological problems like depression and anxiety can really be helped. I don't know whether that applies in the US, but certainly here in the UK. Whereas, if you've got some kind of physical problem, most people are very optimistic that medicine and going to the doctor can be helped. So I take a very optimistic view over most mental health problems. And I'm really positive about the idea that most psychological problems like anxiety and depression can be treated effectively. And I think I'm most kind of proud of my books that kind of like try to promote that idea. But the thing that I did a lot of work in, and I was very privileged to work with a guy called Professor Gerald Russell. He was a professor of eating disorders here in the UK. I worked at perhaps what's regarded as like the equivalent of Johns Hopkins here in the UK, the Maudsley Hospital for Psychiatry, and he was a top eating disorder specialist. Now, he discovered the disorder referred to as bulimia nervosa. Many people have heard of anorexia nervosa, but for any doctor to discover a disease is an incredible achievement. I was his senior lecturer for many years, and he wrote the definitive paper about bulimia nervosa in 1979. A lot of people don't realize how recent it is that disorder was actually first discovered. And I'm really interested in the link between eating, diet, health, and longevity, and the psychology of longevity.
Yeah, and I want to get into every one of them. I mean, many people watching this, because we attract a lot of health seekers, right? They have anxiety, they have sleep disorders, they have depression. All of the things, and they have eating disorders. We have people here who struggle with diets. I want to get into all those subjects, and especially living longer, because that is something that I believe we're all interested in. At least put it this way, living longer healthy. So look, before we get into those topics, I mean, how did you get into this? I mean, you could have been the average psychologist, or better than average with your pedigree, but psychologist, but I mean, meaning that you could have been sitting doing what most psychologists do, and definitely pushing changed you.
Well, I was an unusual psychiatrist in that I tend not to prescribe medication. I'm much more interested in psychological approaches. And I'm really interested, given my interest in beach tennis and lawn tennis, I play in lots of sports.
Okay, hold on. But before we go on, we keep making the joke. So before we got, folks, he said, I was commenting about this resume of his being amazing. And he said, well, one thing it wasn't added is he's number 17 in the UK in beach tennis. This is his new hobby. And then his wife said, well, how many people actually play at 15? And he's like, oh, just like wife. So we're making fun of his new hobby, but it sounds like he's pretty athletic too. I don't know. But go ahead. Sorry to interrupt you, but we keep joking and we didn't bring him in on the joke.
Well, I think there's an important point, which is doctors have to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. So all therapists you go to see, you should ask a patient, does this therapist look like they're enjoying life? Does this look fit and healthy? I mean, so many doctors look really unfit, look really exasperated with life. And I don't think that's, no matter how many diplomas you have, what top medical school you've been to, you've got to walk the walk. And you've got to have you have to be inspiring by the way you lead your life. And I think most patients don't find many doctors inspiring. And I think medical school and the medical school training doesn't emphasize that element. It emphasizes technical skills, technical ability. But I actually think health is all about a philosophy of life. And you have to have an appetite for life. Those are, and a passion for life. And those are things you don't get from medical school. So I'm a strong believer you've got to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. So I have this huge array of hobbies and interests, many of them to do with sport. My wife, of course, thinks I have too many hobbies and interests and too many sports. But the point is you have to really engage and enjoy life. And there's a lot of evidence that is a key predictor of longevity as well. There's no point just wanting to live long. You've got to have a reason you want to live long, things you want to do with your life, and that promotes longevity.
By the way, and not to throw you off course here, but I wrote a book that proved just that, I believe, and it was about the concentration camp, Viktor Frankl. The meaning, essentially the meaning for life, remember? And what he found was the people who lived through the concentration camp, they had a reason to live. The ones that lost a reason to live were the ones who died. And the ones who lived when they shouldn't have lived literally just had a reason, to your point.
And the key point about that, I mean, it's a very important point. Viktor Frankl's book is forgotten now, Man's Search for Meaning. But back in the 60s, it was one of the biggest selling books. And the U.S. Library of Congress rated it one of the most influential books of the 20th century. And one of the profoundly important points, it kind of didn't matter what your purpose was.
That's right.
He wasn't saying you had to be religious or spiritual or whatever it was you were into. The point was you had to have a purpose.
Right.
And that's the significant point, I think, which is often forgotten. Again, he was a psychiatrist and he survived the concentration camps. But his key point was one of the most potent things that medicine can give people is purpose. And I think we've forgotten that with our embracing too much of the technical biological aspect of health.
Yeah. So beach tennis became your thing to live longer. I'm joking, of course. But okay, so let's pull it in though. Okay, so is this your approach? Is this your approach to every health condition? Do you have different approaches? I mean, you want to start into here, but let's hear your approach because obviously it's very different.
Well, let's take an example. A classic example is a lot of people want to lose weight, right? And they come and you say to them, well, why do you want to lose weight? They don't realize that the reason is kind of important. And I like to describe the most effective period when women in particular are most likely to lose weight. And I call this the wedding dress syndrome. I don't know what that happens in the US, but here in the UK, a woman is getting married, there's a wedding date, and usually there's a dress she wants to get into, okay? And that date may be 6 months into the future. And what's really interesting is most women hit the target weight they need to get into that dress. Now, why is it? They are so effective in achieving their goal at that moment in their lives, but they're relatively speaking often ineffective at weight loss goals and other phases of their life. Well, let's unpack what I call the wedding dress syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, there's a date. There's a very specific date, and you're going to have to hit the weight target at that date. And you can't change the date. You can't say a week before the wedding, okay, guys, I'm not thin enough to get into the dress, so we're backing off the date by a few months. So having a specific date, a specific target, a specific number, i.e. being very specific about your goal, rather than just saying, I just need to lose weight. Having a number you have to hit is very important. Have reason you want to hit it. So these women going down the aisle, there's a public humiliation element if you don't hit that target weight. So that massive consequence, the public humiliation, is really powerful as a motivator. So if you unpack all the ingredients in what I call the wedding dress syndrome, and you try to use those ingredients in the rest of your life, you're more likely to hit health and weight goals. So let's go back to beach tennis. I became much fitter and lost weight when I took up beach tennis, because everyone else playing beach tennis, they all play it wearing bikinis. They look gorgeous, and you don't want to be the fat one standing out on the beach tennis court. So there was a public humiliation element to why I got much fitter as a result of being involved in beach tennis. And also, I'm a competitive guy. I will win. And because of that, I became fitter. In other words, there was a better purpose involved in helping me lose weight and becoming fitter than just a general sense of, I just want to lose weight, I just want to be fit. So being specific about your purpose and thinking hard about your purpose is key, I think, in helping people achieve their goals.
I agree. So now, what about eating disorders? You know, I mean, this is, in my mind, I mean, there's a trauma that happens earlier in life, and it can create this thing around, you know, talk about that, because we have many viewers.
Yes, well, I mean, eating disorders are incredibly common, and they're getting commoner. And one of the theories is that there's kind of like a public image pressure through social media, Hollywood promoting very thin ideals. And there's a new eating disorder that men are suffering from called bigorexia. Men are bulking up, and they're using steroids, they're going to the gym, and they're getting anxious about not being big, you know, in terms of like a big...
I actually interviewed a guy on CHTV about that, orthorexia. You know, he had the disease, and he says still struggles from it, but he has it under control, to your point.
Yes. So again, where people are going wrong is having a weight target. You wanting to look thin just because of the way it looks, I think, is the wrong reason. Desire to be fit and desire to have a lifestyle. Again, where people are going wrong is they're not understanding what a healthy lifestyle means. If you just go on a crash diet for a few weeks, you may be successful in losing weight temporarily. But if you return to an unhealthy lifestyle, basically your body shape will going back to what it is. So it's about changing your life, having a lifestyle approach, which is a more enduring way to actually lose weight. About why do you want to be fit? Going back to my example of beach tennis, I want to be fit because for 2 or 3 times in the week, I'm on a court, and it kind of matters if I'm not fit. So having specific, clear reasons that fit in with your overarching life purpose is the key to actually effective weight loss and being fit.
Yeah, I mean, to play devil's advocate, I mean, I think people would say, gosh, you know, I do have a good reason, right? They think that reason, and it could be beyond just looking good. You know, it could be a very emotional reason, but yet they still struggle. How would you deal with that person?
Well, a famous philosopher called Nietzsche, who became a little bit unpopular because he was associated with right-wing philosophies, made a famous point. He said, whenever someone tells you they have the goal of something, like I have the goal to lose weight, what they're really telling you is they don't really want to do that thing. They know they ought to do that thing. Because basically, you don't have to set the goal for anything you really desire to do. If you're going to a party tonight and you want to go to the party, you don't say to everyone, I have the goal of getting to the party. Nothing's going to keep you from that party. So what Nietzsche is saying is when people say they want something, are they really being honest with themselves about what they want? You see, embedded in the word want is what sacrifice you're willing to make to get this thing that you say that you want. A lot of people come to my clinic and they say, I want to lose weight. When I start describing the sacrifices they have to make in order to lose weight, they start to row back and they go, no, I don't want to make that sacrifice. I don't want to make that sacrifice. And what they're really saying is they haven't understood what the word want means. Anytime anyone tells you they want something, you immediately say to them, well, what sacrifice are you willing to make to get it? And if they can't list the sacrifices, they haven't understood what the word want means. Embedded in the word want is the things I'm willing to go without to achieve my goal. So I think goal clarity is a huge part of what psychology and psychiatry are about. People say they want stuff, but actually they're suffering from goal conflict. For example, you want to lose weight, but you don't want to feel hungry. Well, hello, there's goal conflict there. And you've got to resolve the goal conflict in order to achieve your goals.
Do you help people do that? I mean, resolve those? Because that could be difficult.
Yes, well, again, a good little exercise to do that I advocate is called the perfect day exercise. So just to run over what that is, you say to someone, I want you to describe to me what your most perfect day would look like. I'm going to give you a blank check. You can spend any amount of money. You can do anything you like. You can be with anyone. If on your perfect day, you're going to wake up with the Queen in Buckingham Palace, tell me about that. I don't care how crazy it is, right? And what happens very interestingly when people describe their perfect day, right at the end, you say to them, hang on a second, you just told me, for example, that you really wanted to be thin. Your perfect day, you described like 5 meals that you had. You did not describe a lifestyle that looked like. I had a client who had a good-going Class A drug habit, illegal drug habit. And he told me he wanted to give up these drugs. And I asked him to describe his perfect day. And every second hour of his perfect day, he's taking drugs. Okay, so I think the perfect day exercise helps clarify what people really want. If you say to people, tell me what you really want, they actually tell you what they think they ought to want. But if you go through the perfect day exercise and people describe their perfect day, they're caught off guard. You'll come and get it slightly obliquely, and they reveal what they really want. I tell you a really interesting thing. When people describe their perfect day, they often leave out being with their husbands or wives.
Yeah, see, my perfect day.
And I say, what happened to your husband or wife?
I'm safe there. I was thinking of my perfect day with my wife. So, okay, so
a good first date question, by the way. On a first date with someone, ask them to describe their perfect day.
Good idea.
By the way, the rules are you're going to start with start in the morning. Where would you wake up? Where's the perfect place to wake up? And you've got to explain something as well. After they describe the perfect day, if you try to tinker with the day, throw something in, take something out, and then they go, actually, that day is better than the day I described, you then say to them, well, I didn't describe the perfect day. The perfect day is a day that can't be improved. And it's a wonderful exercise for achieving goal clarity. It's great fun, and it's quite wicked, actually, for married couples to do it with each other if they don't quite reveal, first of all, what the perfect day exercise is really about. Because what it's really about is what actually makes you happy, as opposed to what you claim or say.
Right? Yeah. No, I get that. Perfect. Okay, but let's go back to the drug guy. How do you change that? Meaning that what made him happy was when he was on the drugs, and for who knows what reasons, for that. But point is what do you do with that, right? I mean, here's what makes him happy is because his brain only knows happiness for that moment that he feels, that moment of whatever that he feels on that drug. What do you do with that?
First of all, what do most people do in medicine, and I think they're barking up the wrong tree, is they use rational disputation, rational debate. And the reality is, by the time people come to see me, if they're struggling with a bad habit, if rational disputation was going to work, it would have worked. So you've got to get into something else, which I think is emotion. Strong emotion drives people. So a classic example would be someone says, I want to give up smoking, and they haven't given up smoking. And they come to you and they have got a bad cough. And you say to them, I'm really worried that this could be cancer. I'm going to order a chest x-ray. They've given up smoking before they get to the path lab where the x-ray is going to be done because they've become scared. You've activated the powerful emotion of terror. Okay, there is no more powerful emotion than terror and anxiety. Right. And I think doctors back away from that because they don't want to create anxiety in patients. But the reality is, if a patient really wants to stop something, you've got to harness powerful emotions. And the most powerful emotion of all is being scared. That's why usually people give up a bad drug habit after they've got the sack from work or their wife has left them. Often it's a bit too late. But at that moment, strong emotions in play. So I think strong emotion is the key thing that has to be activated. And doctors are scared to do it.
Because if I look, people say, Dr. Brown, how do you stay so disciplined in what you do? The answer is simple. It's the fear of getting sick again. I was very, very sick. Sorry about that. My dog's excited. But the fear, this happens on cell TV. It's what happens when you do it from where your dog lays all day long. But the fear of going back to the way I was is, I can't even comprehend it. So the fear drives me. I mean, there's some pleasure drive there too, meaning that, I love being able to function in my 50s at such a high level. I mountain bike, and no doubt that's correlated to the lifestyle. So, there's some pleasure that drives it, but I would say the big driver is the fear of getting sick again. So my sickness actually worked to my advantage. So people watching this that are sick, it could be their greatest advantage of all. Because it really, the emotions are the drivers. So with that, how do we use it? How do we bring it to our viewers and say, okay, the person that's trying to eat better through the holidays, or whatever it is, trying to lose the weight that they hate, how can we harness to the very things that are going to really change our brain?
Okay, again, these are excellent questions, and you gave a clue when you said one of the reasons why you are fitter is not just about the fear of becoming ill again, but you have goals to do, like you mentioned, if you like mountain biking. You have to have goals that are incompatible with the bad habit. And one great way, if you don't already have those goals, is take up a new goal or a new project, which is incompatible with that. You got a smoker, right? Get them to take up running, because if you start running, you can't keep running and smoke at the same time, because it's just not possible. So eventually what will happen is you'll give up the smoking as you get into running. So you need a goal that's incompatible with the bad habit, and a goal that really grips you, and then eventually you'll give up the bad habit. So with me and the sports that I do, they're the things that keep me on the road. So another key point, of course, is discipline. You're a disciplined person. And what you're looking for is people's history of discipline in the past. When were they at their most disciplined, and why was that? And usually it was when they had goal clarity, when they were studying for a degree, for example, and they're frightened of failing the degree. So you can use those past examples to try to bring it forward to where they are at the moment. But they need goals. And we come back to overarching purpose in life, which is one of the things we're discussing. You have, just talking to you, I can see you have a strong sense of purpose, things you want to do with your life. And that's really crucial to healthcare. And I think the healthcare industry neglects that point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the healthcare is not set up to sit knee to knee with people and actually even dig, right? I mean, they're in, they're out. Here's the drug, we're out. Let's talk about, before we talk about the psychology of longevity, which I want to get to, let's talk about what so many people have today, anxiety and sleep problems. How does all this tie into those?
Well, in order to help people with anxiety, you've got to start doing something which is very not fashionable in the psychiatric world, but ask them, what is anxiety? Get them to label the phenomena correctly. And that goes back to what is an emotion, okay? And when you ask people questions like, what is an emotion? They get a bit stuck. Emotions are things that we experience all the time. You need to understand the evolutionary basis of emotions, because emotions have three main components, which is the experience of the emotion, which it feels like to have the emotion. But then there's physiology, the second key component in play. When you're very anxious, you feel your heart beating fast, you feel sweaty, you feel jangly nerves. There's this physiology in play, which shows that there's an evolutionary purpose to emotions, a biology to emotions. And the final key point is all emotions are a push or a pull towards a behavior. Into a bar, you see an attractive member of the opposite sex, your eyes lock across the bar, you feel a certain love or lust, and that emotion leads you to want to walk over to that person and start talking to them. So all emotions lead to a behavior, and that's the ultimate purpose of emotion. What we have to do is get people to understand, why are you anxious? What role is it playing in your life? Because that anxiety is actually leading you to avoid something. And anxiety is therefore about danger. We evolved to feel anxiety because when you were walking across the African years ago as a caveman and a lion started bounding towards you, you surge of anxiety. It had survival value. It made you turn and run away. So the crucial question in the modern Western world is there's no lions and tigers roaming the streets of London. Why are people so anxious in the modern world? It's because lions and tigers have been replaced by social dangers. They're anxious about being ostracized. They're anxious about finding themselves isolated. They're anxious about being rejected. And so you have to start by asking people, what is the lion or tiger? What are you scared of? Where's the danger? You've got to transition the conversation away from their experience of the emotion to the definition of what's the danger. Because if it really is dangerous, then you should run away. But if it's not dangerous, you need to confront that danger. And that's the analysis in my argument is that you have to go through with people. Get them to label the phenomenon correctly that's going on in their heads, and then get them to figure out what is the danger? Is it really dangerous? And ultimately, confronting the danger is what leads to, in other words, performing an action, performing a behavior, rather than taking drugs, is the correct way to handle these adverse emotions.
Is there a psychology around sleep? Because I know that for me, there was for a bit, because when I was sick, I had mercury toxicity and it drove my endocrine system. Adrenaline, cortisol were not right. Physiologically, I wasn't right. I would be up in the middle of the night. And then even when I got well, if I thought that might, like if I woke up, I would literally anchor back to that feeling, and so it wasn't a physiological thing anymore. It became a psychological battle. So how does that work as far as psychology and sleep?
Well, I want to answer that, but before I answer that, can I ask you, how did you overcome your sleep problem, in your opinion?
Yeah, it became, as my brain got the mercury out of it, my endocrine system started normalizing, honestly. And then my adrenals stopped having to rescue my brain because it was an endocrine disaster. So as the toxins came out, my sleep came back.
So I think you became less anxious as well. I think your general anxiety levels came
down. No doubt. My anxiety, everything went like this as my toxins came out.
Yeah. Okay.
But to my point, even when I was well later, if I would sniff, if I would anchor to something like that because I feared going back, I could almost put myself in that state again psychologically.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there are many reasons why people have sleep problems. So I'm only going to pick one of them. And one of them, paradoxically, is people are afraid of not sleeping. And because they're so afraid of not sleeping, they get themselves into a state which makes it less likely they'll sleep. So one of the things you have to do is, first of all, do what we call psychoeducation. Educate people about sleep. Stick a normal person who sleeps normally in a sleep laboratory and study them. What you find is the average person without suffering from a sleep problem or insomnia wakes up about 4 times on average every night. Okay? All that happens though is they wake up, realize they're awake, turn around, go back to sleep again. Okay? Right. So that waking up is normal and usually transient because most people are relaxed about finding themselves awake in the middle of the night. Now we come to an insomniac. An insomniac is terrified of not sleeping, and they're terrified of not sleeping because they have a view that not sleeping will lead to a disaster the next day. They think it'll be catastrophic if they haven't slept because the next day will be a wipeout. They won't be able to go to work.
I started down that road of thinking, and it made it worse.
Yeah. So what happens now with an insomniac is they go to sleep, then they do the usual transient wake up thing that every normal person's doing. They suddenly realize they're awake, and now they get anxious about being awake. They're in a hyper-aroused state, and as a result, it's more difficult to go back to sleep. So the paradox at the heart of this kind of chronic insomnia is to help the patient become paradoxically less anxious about being awake, and to do that, going back to the lion or tiger, where's the danger? To be less afraid of the idea of not sleeping leading to a disaster the next day. So in other words, they have to stop being worried about the idea there's going to be a catastrophe if they haven't slept. And you can point out that the body will naturally deliver enough sleep left to its own devices. If I set up heavy drilling machinery next to your bedroom, okay, and started drilling very loudly, day in, day out, for the first hours, you'd stay awake. There's no doubt about that. By the time we hit the 72nd hour, sleep will get delivered. Your body will deliver sleep despite your best efforts to stay awake. So one of the other things we say is the body has a natural way of delivering sleep sooner or later, and you just need to relax about the idea that your body, left to its own devices, will deliver sleep no matter what efforts are made around you to keep you awake. So we're trying to get people to be more relaxed about whatever happens in terms of delivery of sleep. And once they get more relaxed about that, the insomnia gets cured. Again, you should be able to do this without drugs. I'm really against the idea of drugs as a treatment for sleep problems.
I'm with you. Wow, Dr. Raj, I love you, man. You're brilliant. Hey, do you do any like for people watching? I mean, do you do any Skype or phone type of stuff? Do you work with people virtually at all?
Yeah. In the modern world, like a lot of my patients fly in to see me in London, but then fly back out to the Middle East, the Far East, the US, LA, New York. And so often, even though I've met them physically, to continue the treatment, we'll do it via the phone, via, audio, via the internet, like we're doing at the moment. Yeah. I mean, these days, modern therapists have to work that way, particularly with clients that are traveling all over the world. Yeah. And also mental health crises can occur at any time. My client might be in Hong Kong, have a panic of some description, need to contact me immediately to do some kind of treatment. So I do this, via phones and so on, all over the world.
Yeah, no, you're brilliant. What are your books? Let's give some of your books.
Well, I've written, my first book was called Staying Sane, which was all about basically how to look after your mental health, how to be resilient without needing to go and see a psychiatrist or a psychologist. Because I think the idea that mental health means you've got to go and see someone, I'm against. I agree that sometimes when people are ill, they need to go and see someone. Sure. But I want to promote people to be resilient without the need to go and see a therapist or become dependent on a therapist. Then I wrote a book called The Motivated Mind, which is about how to achieve your goals, whatever your goals might be. It might be to get a pay rise. It might be to lose weight. So it's a psychology of goal setting and attaining goals. I wrote a book called Simply Irresistible, The Psychology of Seduction, which is about the idea that you can be skilled in relationships and you can learn to be better at relationships. It was a moment of epiphany in one of my clinics. A female patient said to me, Dr. Persaud, I don't need Prozac, I need a boyfriend. And I realized that actually a lot of human unhappiness arises out of relationships, or not having a relationship, or being in the wrong relationship, or feeling isolated. So I wrote this book, which is how to have relationships, and viewing relationships a bit like how you can become skilled at relationships. But I've got to tell you a story. When the publishers first commissioned the book from me, I was very excited. I rang my wife. I said, darling, I spoke to her on the phone. I said, darling, the publishers have asked me to write their next book on seduction. And there was a long silence. And I said, darling, are you still there? And she said, yes, but why you? Which was, I thought, somewhat harsh. But that's what wives are for, bringing us down to earth.
It's like the tennis thing. Was there 15 if you're 17?
That's right.
I want to meet your wife.
Yeah, she keeps me in check. Anyway, so the Simply Irresistible, The Psychology of Seduction. I've done a TED Talk, which has had over 1.5 million views, which is also a bit about this subject. People can watch that on YouTube. But my very last book was called The Mind, A User's Guide. I wrote that as the editor with the Royal College of Psychiatrists here in the UK. It's a comprehensive view of mental health. You could pick a chapter, let's say, on substance abuse or eating disorder and get up to speed very quickly, whatever problem you're worried about. Maybe your daughter's got an eating disorder, or your son may be using drugs. You want to get to speed quickly on finding out the latest information about that. That book is a great book for the public, called The Mind, A User's Guide.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I have to, ask you about this too, because, this is kind of how we were connected. The psychology of fasting. I mean, fasting is something that I teach, preach, and do. Psychology of fasting? Well,
so for the evidence is increasingly the case that if there's one thing you're going to do that's going to lengthen your life more than anything else, it is fasting. But fasting under special conditions is going to be done by someone like yourself explaining how to fast, because obviously if you fast too much and you become anorexic or you starve yourself, you will actually shorten your lifespan. So it's a very technically important, skilled thing to do. But the evidence is, looking at experiments to do with rats and all sorts of other animals, that the best thing the most powerful thing you can do of all the things you can do is actually to intermittently fast. And you will know more about the actual technical aspect of that. But the problem is that we think the reason why biologically that works is because we evolved hundreds of thousands of years ago to survive in an environment where food was an unreliable thing. And so our body adapted to that. Whereas the modern world where food is coming at us very reliably is actually extremely unusual conditions that the body physically is not adapted to. So if we stuck us back into the primitive world where we were forced to fast, that would be fine. The trouble is, the key point in the modern Western world is you're going to have to resist temptation. You're going to have to use psychological discipline to impose fasting. Now, some people can do that relatively easily, but a lot of people struggle with that. So this comes back to some of the things we were talking about, how to motivate people, how to people have goals. But the key point is how to make people optimistic about the idea they can do it, because they often start off very pessimistic and they say, I can't do this. So I think it's about the notion that to fast, you have to choose to fast. And there's going to be powerful human motivation involved, because most people don't believe they can do it. And that lack of self-confidence puts them off having a go. But I'm interested in what you think about that, whether you think there's an important psychology to it.
Yeah, no doubt. One of the things we deal with, you're right. Some people go at it with like, oh my gosh, I mean, you can fast, 5 days without food. They thought they would not. So you're right. I mean, you have to educate people as fact that, we had someone at my seminar at 120 days. Really? So there's a process. So we typically start people, a fasting mimicking diet, as you're familiar with, is a very good place to start somebody, because they can comprehend eating less for many days. And then from there, many of them will evolve into really going, oh my gosh, it's actually pretty easy. My hunger went away in 3 days. And then, the next fast, they can do a pure water fast if they desire. Yeah, I mean, it is. It's just starting them where they are and just change the way they think. And then, interviewing people on shows like this that have fasted, and then they realize, oh, okay, well, if they can do it, they had all the symptoms I had, I can do it. Yeah, so I mean, it's just a process of, like you said. And then here's the thing. You're right, though. You have to give them the reason why, right? What is the reason? Because I find that people with severe health conditions are far greater the fast. It takes them one person that says, I fasted and I feel better, I'm going to fast. Because their reason is, I got to get my life back, right? The average healthy person, it's a little harder because I feel fine. Why would I go without food? Unless they have a goal, if you will, healthy, which brings me to the next topic. It is the psychology of living longer.
But I want to come back to that. But isn't there like a pain barrier, in your opinion, people have got to get through? Because actually what's really interesting, once they've succeeded at fasting, they feel better. It actually delivers a kind of high, which is a better high that you can get from most things. So once people have done it and got to that end, that promised land a bit, i.e. over the pain barrier, if I can call it that, maybe that's the wrong word, then you've got converts and you don't really have to persuade them anymore. So I think there's interesting psychology around that, because one of the reasons people are eating is they're comfort eating. It delivers a quick fix in terms of whatever they're upset about and low about. So that often they're eating for emotional reasons. And actually fasting will deliver a better antidepressant effect than that short-term food hit that they're going for. I don't know what your opinion is on that.
Well, you're right. Fasting brings you a psychological breakthrough. Oh my gosh, I thought I needed food. I thought it was comforting me. I felt better without it. Psychological breakthrough. And then a physiological breakthrough is about day 3 in a fast. Your hungry body starts feeding from its own flesh and tissue, the bad stuff, fortunately. Good, which is, but so there's a physiological breakthrough, and it's shown that food addictions, these bad habits, etc., people after a fast have the greatest chance of breaking bad habits and continuing healthy diets. So I believe the reason for that statistic is there's a psychological and a physiological breakthrough.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk a bit about the link between emotions and psychiatric and psychological problems and longevity. The couple of studies that have come out recently that I'm very interested in. One is a study looking at the fact that people who smoke cigarettes, everyone knows that smoking cigarettes is not a great idea and will shorten your lifespan. On average, if you're a moderate to heavy smoker, you're taking 10 years off your life, right? And that comes as no surprise to most people. If you had a friend who was smoking, you'd say to them, listen, I don't know if you're aware of this, but it's not good for you. And you're going to...
Let me add one more problem to that. My father, who smoked for 50 years, right? His famous saying was, I'll just say it. Son of a bitch, I'm going to die from something anyway. He was an old Italian, right? I'm going to die from something anyway, so I'm going to enjoy my life. If you told my father that it's going to take 10 years off his life, he would say, I don't care because I'm going to enjoy my life. My father's mantra then became, son of a bitch, if I'd known I was going to live so damn long, I would have taken better care of myself. So the point is 10 years didn't fret him. If he would have known he had to suffer 15 on the backside, which he did, he wasn't able to golf. He had emphysema. He ended up with lung cancer. That was the really scary part. So yes, it takes 10 years off your life, but don't be my father. The problem is it gives you a horrible ending to the last 10, 20 that you have.
Yeah, but that's a very important point, which leads on to this coining of this new term, juventology, Juventolog, which is the idea is not just to live long, but to live long in an undisabled, healthy, youthful manner. It's about prolonging youth, not just living to a really old age. There's no point. So the interesting scientific approach now is how do we prolong youth rather than just live for a long time? So your dad had many years of disability, I think, towards the end. There's no point to that. There's no point just adding years that are disabled, suffering. What you want is to add years of fitness, healthy years. That's what the longevity you and I are discussing. That's the goal. So going back to the point about the cigarette smoking study, which found on average people lose 10 years, what's really interesting is when they looked at psychiatric disorders like depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, those disorders took more than 10 years off your life. So think about that. If someone is suffering from low mood or anxiety chronically, they often just leave it because they believe that emotional suffering is something you can't do anything about. If you were to say to someone, listen, you might as well take up smoking if you're going to continue to be anxious and depressed, because it's going to take more years off your life than actually if you took up smoking, people might be a little bit more galvanized and motivated to fix those emotional sides of their life. In other words, low well-being, low happiness, psychiatric disorders, being anxious, being depressed will shorten your lifespan. That's the latest research finding. So if you want to live a long and healthy life, fix the emotional disorders in your life as well. Aim for better well-being because you'll live longer. If you stick with being anxious and depressed and tolerate that, you might as well be smoking cigarettes because it will take at least 10 years off of life.
It's interesting because someone recently I heard make the argument about, they were talking about the little bit of wine, right? And, if you have a glass or two of wine, it loosens you up. You automatically have more fun. They said they believe that it really is the key to why wine is linked to longer life, healthier life, because it makes you a little more jovial. It engages you. So it adds this social component to your dinner, etc. Thought, maybe there's truth to that. Of course, I want to think it's the resveratrol or, the proanthocyanidin. But in fact, it could be the social aspect, if that study's correct.
Well, actually, very interesting you should mention that. So that leads me on to the I want to talk about a famous study published in the Mayo Clinic Proceedings, a famous prestigious academic journal, recently published, based on a big cohort called the Copenhagen Heart Study. And they looked at leisure interests and pursuits. And I'm slightly biased here because the sport that delivered most years on longevity sport I play. I know it's not beach tennis.
I was going to say beach tennis again.
No, it's lawn tennis. So ordinary tennis played on a hard court, added on average 10 years lawn tennis or hard court tennis, added on average 10 years to their life. Badminton was a few years less than that. What was really interesting was because tennis is quite a sociable sport. People play tennis, then they normally have like a cup of tea afterwards or they hang out afterwards. Badminton came second, soccer came third. Solitary sports like cycling, running, being in the gym were further down the list. They added only 2 or 3 years to your life. So one of the theories is the sociable element that seemed to be a very important part, not just the exercise element in adding years to life. So I thought that was really interesting. And I wonder what your opinion would be about.
Yeah, I mean, again, looking at, what I was saying, even with a little bit of wine makes people more social, right? And the theory was that's really what extends the life. I've read, if you isolate people, they die, right? I mean, animals the same way, right? When you isolate, so they die. It's as important as food. We have to be social. And the more social life, things going on in your life, the better it is, the healthier you are. So I think there's massive truth to it.
And the other really interesting thing about that is that we tend to be interested in and attracted to and want to hang out with happy people. Again, there's a link between being depressed and negative as a person, or having a difficult personality, and not being so popular socially. So there's maybe an interesting point, which is that the more sociable people are not just adding to their life because of the sociability element, which I agree with you is important. Be sociable. You have to be a fairly upbeat, positive person. It tends to draw people towards you. And if you're more isolated, there's something about your personality that may have led to that. So we're not sure what the key underlying variable is with sociability, but maybe there's something about having a sunny disposition, which is the key mediating variable that is crucial. I mean, obviously having friends means you tend to be more active. You tend to go and hang out with them as well. So we're not exactly sure what the variable is, but sociability seems to be extremely important.
I mean, there's the studies too, and they look at the people who live long and they have, a pretty massive social network and outreach, right? And we look at communities, cultures that live long. They're all very, very segregated cultures, right? In every bit, I have a Life magazine over here, and that's one of the things that they concluded. They looked at all the blue zones, and the social aspect actually was a bigger deal than I wanted to give credit for. I was hoping for other things, but that was a big deal.
Yeah. So I think that I'm going back to the point, it's not worth just wanting to live longer. You have to have things you want to do with your life, things you want to, if you want to hang out with people, you want to be with people. And I think there's another very interesting theory about the link between well-being and longevity, which is that we know that up until about the age of 40, for reasons that are not entirely clear, maybe to do with evolution and genetics, most people are physically pretty fit. Getting past 65, most people have some kind of physical disorder by that age, and we're not quite sure why that is. What is the thing about what's going on in aging? And I have a theory that it's something to do with purpose. Up until about the age of 40, people have all sorts of purposes. They want to have a family, they want to have kids, they're pursuing their career. Usually around middle age, people start to get a bit disenchanted about purpose. They become disillusioned. They realize they're not going to be the CEO of Goldman Sachs, actually. And they have to think through the change in ambition and goals. You had children, they don't end up being the track star that you hoped they were going to be, etc., etc. So the ages between 40 and 65 are often ages of reappraisal and disappointment very often. And I think handling that psychologically is really important.
Let me bring the physiological and the psychological together, as we see, and we're both doing it, about why people start breaking down, right, in their 50s and especially your mid-60s. You look at the viability of their stem cells, and their number of stem cells dropped. I mean, that's measurable. Stem cells is how you heal from injury. Stem cells is why your body's not developing osteoarthritis, wear and tear, all of it, right? It's how your arteries keep healing. And, when we look at that, I have his book up right over there, and it's The Biology of Belief, Bruce Lipton, right? Our thoughts, to your point, actually determine the epigenetics and so our thoughts, we know, drive cellular behavior. So our thoughts are our cells and therefore our health. So that's the connection between the two, right? So you can keep what you're saying, the thoughts, the drive, the hope, everything that we know, makes you successful in anything, even live longer. If you can keep that, you're going to keep viable stem cells available and therefore logical healing. So anyways, I'm just connecting the psychology with the physiological.
Yeah, but having drive, we're discussing is important, but having a plan. You see, people often don't have a plan. So I'll take that back to the book I wrote on the psychology of seduction and about the notion of having a plan in relationships. Again, people don't like this idea because they think it's slightly manipulative and strategic in their view of relationships. They think when it comes to relationships, you should, quote, just be yourself. In the book that I wrote, when I
argued yourself,
yeah, that's right. I argued that if you understood the psychology of relationships, I made this very bold claim that you could make anyone fall in love with you, right? If you understood the rules and the laws of attraction.
That was a big seller.
Yeah, you're right. So the BBC here in Britain read this claim, and they said, we're going to test this claim. We're going to send you speed dating. I don't know, in the US, you have this thing called speed dating as well, where you go to a club or a bar, you have 3 minutes to talk to someone. Someone rings the bell, blows a whistle. You've got to move on to the next person.
So you did this. They made you do it.
They made me do it. I'm going to get to that bit of the story in a minute, but just going to explain for people who may not know what speed dating, just pretending they don't know. Darling, I have no idea what he's talking about. Anyway, so speed dating, someone blows a whistle after 3 minutes, and then at the end of the evening, you write down who you want to see again for friendship, who you want to see again for romance, and who you never want to see again. So you get some rather brutal feedback on how attractive you were found. So you said to me, we're going to test your theory that you can make anyone fall in love with you. We're going to send you speed dating. So when I tell my wife this, we're going to go speed dating, she said, this is a really bad idea. Why? She said, well, suppose no one chooses you. I said, thanks for the vote of confidence. And she said, no, you don't understand. You don't understand. If no one chooses you, then I look like a loser. I ended up with you. Anyway, so I had to say to her, it's not all about you, you know. Anyway, so when we went speed dating, I was chatting to some of the guys before the exercise started. So I said to them, what's your plan? What's your strategy? And they all looked at me blankly and they said, we're just going to be ourselves.
You're like, I got it.
So I said to them, have you ever wondered why you're single? It's because you're being yourself. Time to be someone else. Anyway, so here's a very quick rundown of one theory about relationships, which is a useful plan to have in terms of relationships.
The results, please.
I'll tell you that in a minute. I'm going to keep you dangling.
Right, as long as you're doing that.
I'm going to keep you dangling. So you can divide relationships into 3 key phases: attention, interest, maintenance. And this is a very powerful model for not just friendships, but romance, but also business relationships. So attention, interest, maintenance, 3 different phases requiring 3 different sets of skills. Okay, if you're going to be the consummate expert in relationships, you have to know which phase you're in and adapt yourself to the correct skills. So the attention phase is you walk into a bar, you see an attractive member of the opposite sex, or maybe the same sex, your eyes look across the bar, and they have your attention, and hopefully you've got their attention, right? So the attention phase is where someone becomes really salient to you and they kind of come out of the environment and you're locked onto them. And we all know some people who are great at getting attention.
True.
Now, you go over and start talking to them, and the attention phase will last a few seconds, hours, maybe a few days. You go over and start talking to them, and now you're entering the interest phase. You have my attention, but are you interesting? Are you willing to know? Now, there's some people that are great at getting our attention, but you go over and try and talk to them, shoot me in the face now. You're really boring or tedious. And then finally, after the interest phase, you get to the maintenance phase, where you're thinking after a few months, I want to commit to you, I want to try and make this work, right? Now, we all know people who are wonderful people. We think they're fantastic. We don't know why they're single. Those people are great at the maintenance. They're reliable, they're honest, they're loyal, but they're not doing attention and interest really well. You walk into a bar and you wouldn't notice them. The key point here, if you want to be very good at relationships, understand different skills are required depending on the phase, okay? Having a plan. This is a plan I'm discussing. And I think having a plan is a much better framework and structure in terms of how to proceed with relationships. Now, let us married and have been for the last 10 years or 15 years. You may think, I don't need to know this attention, interest, maintenance thing. I've galloped towards maintenance. I'm for. You are not. My point is this. All great long-term relationships that last many decades, you have to be constantly cycling through attention, interest, and maintenance. You've got to get your wife's attention again in a novel, unexpected way. Because if you don't do that, if you're not constantly cycling through this attention, interest, and maintenance thing, someone else will come along and get her attention. And that will be dangerous. So this model is a great, clear structure that helps people start relationships, but helps people continue relationships. Yeah. Now, whether you at least it's a plan, and I think people need a plan because it leads to better drive. It leads to better movement forward than the let's just be ourselves plan. Again, I'm interested in your opinion.
Well, I want the result first before I share my opinion. So how did you do?
Oh, I see, about the speed dating. Yeah. So I met, I think it was 9 women. By the way, my wife came along because she was really anxious about me doing really badly. And in between, when we got out the cab to get into the club, I took my wedding ring off. And she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I can't go speed dating wearing a wedding ring. It looks sleazy."
That's fine. So your wife was rooting for you for her own sake. God,
That's right.
I hope he gets all 9 women interested in him.
Yeah. In between each girl, my wife would pull me aside and go, "You're doing this all wrong." And she kept giving me tips. So it's very sweet. She was very keen. I got chosen at least one woman. Anyway, so the first woman I met, I said to her, "So where are you from?" Remember, I'm in London, England. And she said, "I'm from Turkey." And I said, "So what kind of guy are you looking for?" And she said, "I'm looking for a passport." So she obviously wanted to meet someone to get naturalized.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you had that. Okay, so that's one.
I had that. Small one. Anyway, so a couple of quick things. Remember, because we were talking about the psychology of attraction, with the truth, because it's a psychology experiment, I'm going to throw a test question at you. In the 3 minutes you have with a woman, as a man, one of the key things women want to know, I know this is going to sound a bit sexist, but the psychological research will back me up on this one. They want to know what a guy does for a living. So, if you were playing fast and loose with the truth, and you only had 3 minutes, and you were taking part in an experiment, you wanted to maximize female attraction in you, profession or the best job to say that you have?
I don't know.
Putting you on. Sorry?
I don't know.
Well, you're going to have to do better than that.
Well, okay, I hope a doctor, because that's what I am, right?
Right.
Is that not
so
the right answer?
You use this in bars a lot, I can tell. Okay, so doctor's not bad. Well, why are you thinking a doctor will maximize female attraction?
Well, I mean, they want a man that's going to be successful, right? A woman intuitively, and again, not to sound sexist, intuitively they're looking for someone who's able to take care of them, right? And I guess if we were in the Stone Ages, they'd be looking for a man who could shoot a bow and arrow pretty well, right? I mean, that sounds fun to me.
Okay, so again, the research indicates that women are looking for 3 aspects of character in a man. They're looking for intelligence. That's the number one thing. So maybe a doctor signals intelligence, okay? They're looking for status, so someone who people look up to, and they're also looking for resources. We call resource allocation, because resources, like you described, a man who's a successful hunter hundreds of thousands of years ago will provide resources and be able to look after the woman and any children that she may have. So in the modern dates through into things like income.
Yeah.
So if you're thinking about a profession, that being a doctor is not a bad one. But I'm going to push you a little bit, because I went further. I'm going to tell you what I said in a minute, but I picked a particular specialty. What's the best specialty to say that you're a doctor?
Oh, boy. I don't know. Let's see. How about a surgeon?
No, not bad. Not bad.
Neurosurgeon.
So what I said, I said I was a pediatric heart surgeon.
So now you're tapping into like their children.
Yeah, you see, Machiavellian manipulative psychological strategy. So I said I was a pediatric heart surgeon, and I spent my day mending tiny.
Oh, now you're caring too, and you're smart, and you're successful. Yeah, you're because this was a test that the BBC put you up to. You're okay to lie just to see what the fact that it works.
Yes.
So that one worked well.
Yeah. So I said I was a pediatric heart surgeon. I said I spent my day mending tiny, broken little hearts. I'm not proud of the second bit, but my wife was anxious about me, so I had to bring out the big guns. And I think when I do that experiment with most women, compared to most professions that men say, the pediatrics to go down well.
Yeah. Okay, but now let's bring it to reality. You can't lie. If you're a plumber, you got to say the word, I'm a plumber. So, okay, now you have to build it a different way. You see what I'm saying?
But you see, but let's go back to the fact that the number one thing women are looking for is IQ, for intelligence, right? And one of the things that in the old Lonely Hearts columns was the acronym that people put down was GSOH, good sense of humor, right? So the theory in psychology is a man who displays good sense of humor is actually inadvertently expressing intelligence,
Oh, yeah, I
being
often
witty.
wondered that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's one of the reasons women are attracted to that at a subconscious level. They're drawn to intelligence as displayed in that way. So a plumber still got a good chance if you can demonstrate intelligence. And if you can demonstrate intelligence by being witty and clever with wordplay, then that experiment we did on British television, I ran it on a show where we did a Lonely Hearts column, and we showed a picture of some people, and then we did a biog underneath the picture, and the biog said things like, come with me on a date, and we're going to go to the Caribbean, and we're going to swim in the blue Caribbean Sea. And we asked viewers to rate how attractive they found that blurb and how attractive they found the picture above it. With the second condition of the experiment, we used exactly the same blurb, we just changed one word. Instead of saying, come with me, we're going to go to the Caribbean and we're going to swim in the blue Caribbean Sea, we said we're going to swim in the azure Caribbean Sea. Azure being a word for blue, it means blue. It's a short word, almost the same length as blue. And we thought it would be below conscious awareness. Most people reading it wouldn't have spotted there's only one word change. But azure is a rare word for the word blue. And there is some evidence that if you use rare words, i.e. you show your vocabulary is quite sophisticated, that signals intelligence in an extremely powerful, unconscious way.
As a dyslexic, I'm out here. See, now I'm scoring really low. I'm like, okay, I can't remember the obscure words. I can't remember the average, a normal average word, let alone the obscure word. Go ahead, finish your point.
But I would suggest some word lists at night.
Okay.
That'll help you sleep as well. Anyway, so we ran the experiment, and sure enough, azure made a significant difference to how attractive that person was found. So it worked. And ever since that experiment, whenever I'm talking to, I tend to casually drop the word azure into the conversation in the hope that it will have an effect.
Your wife's looking at you going,
yes, that's right. In your dreams.
I knew what you were up to. Your psychologist. How we got on this conversation? How did we get on this conversation? You drew me in, man. You have the ability. See, you drew me into this.
We discussed having a plan.
Yeah.
We discussed having a plan. We're saying that having a plan is important, even a plan in relationships, even a plan in a conversation, having a plan over your day, having goals for the day, having a plan for the week. We're saying that's the key thing. So I brought it back to a place where people don't think you should have a plan. They don't think you should have a plan when it comes to relationships. But I'm arguing that actually, even in relationships, it's a good idea to have a plan. So
let's bring it all full circle, right? If you want to live longer healthy, you better have a plan. That's rule number one. Just having a plan, will get you there. And you have to keep, interest, hope, or like you said, something. Even we may not have the plan to be the big CEO or the whatever it is, but you better make a new plan to keep your interest.
Yeah, have goals. Yeah. Also, you need high quality information. Where are you going to get high information on the latest research? Go for people who've got some kind of qualification, people who've studied the thing formally in some sense, I think. Also, people who are walking, people who look like they're enjoying life. They just know the technical stuff. So be a good judge of information. The internet is awash with information. Most of it is very low quality, and people can get sent down the wrong pathway as a result. So be critical of the information that you're getting, and have a way of judging whether it's good information or bad information. Try things out and see whether they work or not, but certainly have a go at various things. But look at a viable plan, and look for plans that have evidence behind it, I think. And I'd be interested in your opinion.
That time already. You and I could just keep chatting. I'm going to have to bring you out. When you're in the U.S., we're going to get together. Dr. Raj, you're a brilliant guy. I love talking to you. And how do people reach you? Do you have a website? How do they find your books?
Yeah, all that? You can find me by typing the website is rajpersaud.com. They can find me on YouTube. I've got an app, a free app you can download on iTunes and Google Play called Raj Persaud in Conversation. It's me interviewing top experts in mental health, and it's completely free, and it has a lot of information on it. And it's audio. It's an audio-only podcast app, so you can download me interviewing some of the best experts on all aspects of mental health from all over the world.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you for having me on your show. It's been great talking to you, and I like your azure shirt.
Hey, you drew me in, man. It was the word azure, I guess. I don't know what it was. I hope to have you at one of our future seminars too, and again on the show. Thanks.
Thanks. Goodbye.
Well, that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, which was brought to you by Fast Tonic Molecular Hydrogen. Please check it out at getfasttonic.com. We'll be back next week and every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern. We truly appreciate your support. You can always find us at podcast.drpompa.com. And please remember to spread the love by liking, subscribing, giving an iTunes review, or sharing the show with anyone you think may benefit from the information heard here. And as always, thanks for listening.